Before the story begins, imagine this: a lone man walking through the brutal frozen wastelands of Lapland carrying more gold than most men could dream of, while an entire Nazi platoon turns into hunters and slowly realizes they picked the wrong prey. This is the world of Sisu 2022, a Finnish action war film directed by Jalmari Helander, made on a modest budget of around $6 million, yet delivering the intensity of a much bigger blockbuster. It's a story of survival, revenge, and unstoppable willpower, the kind of raw cinema that grips you from the first frame and refuses to let go. If you enjoy intense survival stories, brutal action sequences, and films that feel like pure adrenaline, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Seniora, and drop a comment telling us your favorite action movie. Your support keeps these cinematic breakdowns alive. The story opens in the final days of World War II in 1944, deep inside the desolate wilderness of Finnish Lapland. The land is scorched by retreating German forces who are burning villages, destroying everything in their path as they fall back. The silence of the icy landscape is broken only by explosions, gunfire, and the harsh wind sweeping across endless snowfields. It is here that we meet Atami Korpi, a solitary gold prospector who has chosen a life away from humanity. He is not a soldier, not a hero in the traditional sense, just a man who has seen too much violence and decided to leave it all behind. Atami rides his horse through the frozen terrain, accompanied only by his loyal dog. His face carries the weight of a past filled with bloodshed, though he says almost nothing. There is a quiet determination in him, a sense that he has already survived things most men could never endure. After days of searching, he finally discovers something extraordinary: a rich gold deposit buried deep in the earth. With patience and relentless effort, he digs through the frozen soil, breaking rocks and carrying heavy loads of dirt. Each scoop brings him closer to freedom, to a new life away from war and destruction. When he finally collects enough gold, Atami carefully packs it into his saddlebag. The treasure is heavy, glowing faintly in contrast to the cold, dead world around him. This moment feels like victory, a man finally reclaiming something beautiful from a land soaked in violence. He prepares to leave the wilderness and travel towards civilization, where he hopes to trade his gold for a peaceful future. But fate has other plans. As Atami rides toward the nearest town, he crosses paths with a retreating SS Panzer division led by a ruthless Nazi commander. This unit is not just passing through, they are scavengers, killers, and looters, stripping the land of anything valuable before they retreat. When they notice Atami alone with his horse and the heavy gold he carries, greed flashes in their eyes. To them, he is just an easy target, a lonely old man who won't survive a confrontation. They stop him. At first, they try intimidation. Guns are drawn, commands are shouted, and the soldiers assume the situation is already under control. But something about Atami feels wrong. He doesn't beg, he doesn't panic, he simply watches them with calm, unreadable eyes. That silence unsettles them more than resistance ever could. They demand the gold. Atami says nothing. What happens next changes everything. In a flash of brutal precision, Atami reveals what he truly is. The quiet prospector is not just a man, he is a legend of war, a former commando known for killing hundreds during the Winter War. In seconds, the encounter turns into chaos. One soldier is eliminated instantly, followed by another, and suddenly the forest echoes with gunfire. Snow is stained red as the calm landscape becomes a battlefield. Atami doesn't fight like a soldier following rules. He fights like a man who has nothing left to lose. Every movement is efficient, every strike lethal. He uses the environment, the snow, the rocks, even his bare hands, to dismantle his enemies one by one. The Nazi patrol, once confident and cruel, quickly realizes they have awakened something far more dangerous than they imagined. But this is only the beginning. Despite suffering injuries and being vastly outnumbered, Atami refuses to fall. Even when he is captured, even when they believe he is finished, he finds a way back. His willpower becomes the true weapon, something stronger than bullets, stronger than fear. As the remaining soldiers regroup, they begin to understand that this is no ordinary man. The deeper they chase him into the wilderness, the more the situation spirals out of control. Their mission to steal gold turns into a desperate fight for survival against a one-man force of nature who seems impossible to kill. And in this frozen hell, the legend of Atami Korpi begins to spread among the soldiers, not as a man, but as something closer to a myth, a man who refuses to die. The hunt has begun, but the hunters may have made a fatal mistake. The frozen wasteland of Lapland has now fully transformed into a battlefield of fear, silence, and survival. The Nazis who once believed they were in control are no longer hunters. They are prey trapped inside an endless white graveyard. Every passing hour makes it clearer that the man they tried to rob is not running from them anymore. He is slowly, methodically wiping them out one by one. Atami Korpi moves through the snow like a ghost born from war itself. His body is wounded, his clothes torn, yet his spirit is unshaken. Pain does not stop him, cold does not slow him, hunger does not break him. There is something inside Atami that refuses to surrender, something forged in the darkest days of past battles. The gold he carries is no longer just treasure. It has become the reason for bloodshed, the trigger for a war between one man and an entire military unit. The German commander now realizes the seriousness of the situation. What started as a simple opportunity to loot a lone prospector has turned into a nightmare. He gathers his remaining soldiers and orders them to tighten security, patrol in groups, and eliminate anything that moves. But order means nothing in a place like this. Fear has already started spreading inside their ranks. Men whisper about a death spirit in the snow. Some refuse to move alone. Others question whether they are even fighting a human being anymore. The landscape itself becomes their enemy. The endless white fields offer no cover, no safety, and no certainty. Tracks in the snow disappear quickly, swallowed by wind and time. The cold bites deeper than bullets, making every decision slower, every mistake more dangerous. Atami understands this world better than anyone else. He does not fight against the land. He uses it as his weapon. Another patrol is sent out to track him. This time they are more cautious, more prepared, and more nervous than before. Their boots crunch against frozen ground as they move forward, scanning every direction. Silence surrounds them, thick and unnatural. Then suddenly, one man disappears. No sound, no warning, just gone. Panic spreads instantly. Weapons rise, voices shout, but there is nothing to shoot at. The snow remains still, the forest remains quiet, and fear begins to replace discipline. A second explosion of violence follows shortly after. Hidden traps placed carefully in advance turn the environment into a killing field. The soldiers are caught off guard, scattered, and isolated. In seconds, the formation collapses. They try to regroup, but Atami is already among them, moving with brutal efficiency. He doesn't waste movement. Every action has purpose. Every strike ends a life. The snow absorbs the chaos, turning white into red in silent contrast. Back at the main convoy, tension becomes unbearable. The commander begins to lose control as reports keep coming in. Another unit missing, another patrol wiped out, another signal lost. His officers demand answers, but there are none. The enemy they are facing refuses to engage like a normal soldier. There is no front line, no clear battlefield, only disappearance, destruction, and silence. Atami's presence becomes psychological warfare. Even when he is not seen, he is felt. Soldiers hesitate before stepping forward. They check their surroundings repeatedly. Sleep becomes rare. Every crack of ice or rustle of wind feels like a warning. The idea that one man is causing all of this begins to break their minds more than their bodies. Fear spreads faster than orders. Inside this chaos, Atami continues his quiet mission. He is not rushing, he is not angry. He is focused. Each movement through the snow is calculated. He knows the terrain better than they ever will. He uses frozen rivers to mask his steps, thick snowbanks for concealment, and abandoned equipment as distractions. He turns their own military strength against them by removing their ability to predict anything. A surviving soldier from one of the patrols returns to the base barely alive. His face is filled with terror. He tries to explain what happened, but his words make little sense. He speaks of sudden attacks, invisible movements, and a man who refuses to stay down even after being shot or beaten. The soldiers listening to him begin to realize something terrifying. This is not just a fight. It is a hunt where the outcome is already decided and they are on the losing side. The commander, desperate to regain control, orders a final push. He decides they will hunt Atami down directly and finish this once and for all. He gathers his remaining forces, heavy weapons, and armored support. It is no longer about gold. It is about survival, pride, and control. But in doing so, they make their biggest mistake. They commit fully to a battle they still do not understand. Atami watches from a distance, hidden among the white shadows of the wilderness. He sees their movement, their formation, their desperation, and for the first time, the chase begins to shift completely. The hunters are no longer chasing blindly. They are coming directly toward him. But Atami does not fear this moment. He has been waiting for it. As the convoy moves deeper into the frozen land, the silence grows heavier. The wind slows. The world feels still, as if holding its breath. The Nazis advance carefully, unaware that every step they take is leading them closer to their downfall. Somewhere ahead in the endless white, Atami Corpi waits, calm, patient, and unstoppable. The war is no longer between an army and a man. It is between fear and the will to survive. The German convoy pushes deeper into the frozen heart of Lapland, unaware that they are no longer conducting a mission. They are walking into a trap designed by the very land itself. The commander believes that if they move with enough force, enough discipline, and enough firepower, they can finally corner Atami Corpi and end this nightmare. But what he fails to understand is that this is not a battlefield where traditional rules apply anymore. This is survival in its purest, most brutal form. The snowstorm begins to rise slowly, like nature itself reacting to the violence that has been unleashed upon it. Visibility drops. The horizon disappears. The white landscape becomes a shifting maze where direction loses meaning. Vehicles struggle through deep snow, engines straining, soldiers scanning every direction with increasing paranoia. Every shadow feels alive. Every drift of snow could be hiding death. Atami watches from a distance, completely still, blending into the environment so perfectly that he feels more like a part of the wilderness than a human being. He studies their movement carefully. He is not reacting emotionally. He is calculating. Every step the enemy takes is being analyzed, every gap in their formation noted. He knows they are walking into his territory now, and in his territory they are already defeated. The convoy suddenly slows as the terrain becomes more dangerous. A frozen river lies ahead, its surface deceptively solid. The commander orders caution, but arrogance still lingers in his decision-making. He believes speed is necessary before Atami can strike again, so the vehicles begin crossing in. That is when everything collapses. The ice beneath the convoy begins to crack under the weight. At first it is subtle, thin fractures spreading like spider webs. Then, within seconds, the frozen river gives way. Trucks sink violently into the freezing water below. Metal groans, men shout, horses panic. The entire formation is thrown into chaos as the ice turns into a deadly trap. Some soldiers try to escape only to be swallowed by the freezing depths. Others are stranded, exposed, and disoriented. And in that chaos, Atami strikes again. He moves through the storm like a shadow cutting through silence. There is no hesitation in his actions. Every enemy he encounters is dealt with swiftly, efficiently, without hesitation. The environment does half the work for him. The collapsing ice, the freezing wind, the panic spreading through the ranks. He only completes what nature has already started. The battlefield is no longer organized. It is broken, scattered, and drowning in fear. The German commander finally realizes the truth too late. This man is not fighting them in a traditional sense. He is dismantling them using patience, intelligence, and the environment itself. There is no clear enemy line, no predictable attack, only destruction appearing where they least expect it. Survivors scramble back to stable ground, regrouping in panic. Their once disciplined formation is gone. Weapons are raised in confusion. Orders are shouted but barely heard through the storm. Some men refuse to move forward, others want to retreat. The unit that once marched with confidence is now fractured by fear. Atami does not chase them blindly. He lets them break themselves. He understands something they never learned in war. Fear destroys faster than bullets ever could. And right now, fear is doing most of his work. One by one, remaining soldiers are picked off in the aftermath of the disaster. Isolated, injured, lost in the storm, they become easy targets. There is no glory in these encounters, only survival. Atami moves with cold precision, ending each confrontation before it can escalate. His presence is never loud. It is always sudden, brief, and final. Back with the commander, desperation reaches its peak. He realizes that continuing forward means total annihilation, but retreat is no longer easy. The landscape itself has become hostile. Equipment is damaged. Men are missing. Communication is failing. The goal they came for has become meaningless. What matters now is simply making it out alive. But even survival feels uncertain, because somewhere in the white storm, Atami Corpi is still there, waiting, watching, and closing in. The hunt has shifted completely now. The army is no longer searching for gold, and Atami is no longer just defending himself. This has become something else entirely. A silent war between an entire military force and a single man who refuses to fall, no matter how frozen, how wounded, or how outnumbered he becomes. The frozen chaos of Lapland has now turned into something far more desperate. The German unit, once confident and aggressive, is barely holding itself together after the disaster at the frozen river. Men are scattered across the snow-covered wasteland, injured, lost, and mentally broken. What was supposed to be a controlled military operation has become a nightmare of survival, where every direction looks the same and every silence feels like death waiting to strike. The commander tries to restore order, but his authority is slipping fast. His voice, once commanding and sharp, now feels weak against the roaring wind. Soldiers no longer respond with discipline, they respond with fear. Some refuse to move, others demand retreat. and a few simply sit in silence, staring into the endless white emptiness. The illusion of control has completely shattered. They are no longer an organized force. They are survivors trapped inside a frozen graveyard. Atomy Corpi, meanwhile, continues his quiet dominance over the land. He does not rush, he does not panic, he does not celebrate. Every step he takes is deliberate, as if the entire battlefield belongs to him. The storm around him is not an obstacle, it is cover. The snow beneath his feet is not danger, it is protection. He moves with the confidence of someone who has already accepted every outcome, including death, and still chooses to continue forward. The remaining German soldiers attempt to regroup at a partially sheltered location, using abandoned vehicles and broken equipment as cover. They set up a defensive perimeter, convinced that holding position might give them a chance to survive the night. But the fear inside the camp is louder than any external threat. Every sound outside the perimeter makes them jump. Every shadow feels like movement. Sleep is impossible. Even breathing feels heavy under the pressure of uncertainty. Atami observes them from a distance, watching how they have changed. These are no longer the same soldiers who tried to take his gold with arrogance and confidence. Now they are exhausted, frightened, and unpredictable, and unpredictability is something even he must respect. He knows that a cornered animal can still be dangerous even if it is already dying. So he waits, studying them, letting their fear grow deeper before making his next move. The storm intensifies as night begins to fall. Darkness mixes with snow, creating a blurred world where vision is almost useless. This is when Atami makes his next move. He approaches the perimeter slowly, silently, using the storm as his shield. The first attack is sudden and precise. One soldier disappears without a sound. Then another. Panic spreads instantly through the camp as the realization hits them that he has entered their space without detection. Gunfire erupts blindly into the storm, but there is nothing to hit. Bullets disappear into white emptiness. Muzzle flashes reveal nothing but falling snow. The soldiers are firing at fear itself now, not at a visible enemy. Atami moves between them like a shadow carved out of survival instinct, striking quickly and vanishing before anyone can respond. The perimeter collapses not through force but through confusion and terror. The commander finally understands that staying in place is suicide. He orders a full withdrawal toward a nearby extraction point, hoping to regroup and escape the wilderness. But by now, escape itself feels like a fantasy. The terrain has become unfamiliar, the storm has erased clear paths, and the remaining men are too exhausted to move quickly. Every step forward feels like walking deeper into uncertainty. Atami allows them to move for a while. He does not attack immediately. Instead, he follows at a distance, controlling the rhythm of the chase. He knows exactly when to strike and when to remain silent. His patience is what breaks them more than any weapon. The fear of not knowing when he will appear is more powerful than any direct confrontation. As the convoy struggles through the snow once again, another trap reveals itself. The land gives way under pressure, sending more vehicles off balance. The retreat turns into another collapse, another moment of chaos that spreads panic through the remaining ranks. Men scatter in every direction, shouting, slipping, falling into the freezing ground. The commander tries to maintain control, but everything is slipping beyond recovery. And in that final collapse of order, Atami steps forward again, not as a man fighting for survival, but as a force completing what has already been decided by the wilderness itself. The night in Lapland has become darker, colder, and far more merciless than anything the German soldiers were prepared for. What remains of the unit is no longer an army. It is a broken collection of exhausted men scattered across a frozen wasteland, clinging to survival with whatever strength they have left. Their mission has completely lost meaning. The gold they once desired feels like a distant illusion, something that cost too many lives to ever justify. The commander, now visibly shaken, tries to gather his remaining forces into some kind of formation. But there is no discipline left to restore. The soldiers are no longer responding as trained men. They respond as frightened individuals, each one more focused on staying alive than following orders. Communication is failing, radios are dead. The storm outside grows heavier, swallowing sound and direction alike. The world itself feels like it has turned against them. Inside a makeshift shelter built from damaged vehicles and broken metal, the men huddle together for warmth. Their breath forms thick clouds in the freezing air. No one speaks unless necessary. Even silence feels safer than words. Every small sound, the creak of metal, the shift of snow, the wind brushing against steel makes them flinch. Fear is no longer occasional, it has become constant. Atomic Corpi is still out there. That single thought is enough to keep them awake. They no longer see him as a man. He has become something larger in their minds, an unstoppable force moving through the snow, silent and patient, appearing only when death is already too close to avoid. Some soldiers whisper prayers, others check their weapons repeatedly, as if repetition can somehow prevent the inevitable. But deep down, everyone understands the same truth. They are being hunted. Atami watches from a distance, partially hidden by the storm. He studies the remaining group carefully. He is not rushing. He is not acting on emotion. Every movement he makes is controlled and intentional. He understands their condition better than they understand it themselves. They are exhausted, afraid, and slowly breaking apart from within. He does not need to force their collapse. Their fear is already doing most of the work. The commander finally makes a decision. He cannot stay here. He orders a final withdrawal toward a distant extraction point where support may still be possible. It is a desperate gamble, but staying means certain death. The remaining soldiers gather what little equipment they can carry. Vehicles that still function are restarted with difficulty. Engines cough to life in the freezing air. And slowly the convoy begins to move again into the endless white darkness. But the journey is not safe. The storm intensifies as they advance. Visibility drops even further, turning the world into a blur of shifting white shapes. The terrain becomes unpredictable. Snowdrifts hide deep gaps in the ground. Ice layers conceal unstable surfaces beneath. Every meter forward feels like a risk. The convoy moves slowly, carefully, but uncertainty follows them at every step. Atami follows. He does not attack immediately. Instead, he shadows them, always maintaining distance. He understands timing better than aggression. He knows that panic grows stronger when it is stretched over time. Every moment they spend wondering where he is becomes another layer of psychological pressure. They begin to expect him at every turn, in every shadow, behind every sound. The convoy reaches a narrow passage between frozen rock formations. The wind here is sharper, louder, almost screaming as it passes through the cliffs. The commander orders caution, but exhaustion is clouding judgment. The vehicles proceed anyway, one after another, tightly packed in formation. This decision proves to be a mistake. Without warning, the ground beneath part of the convoy destabilizes. Snow-covered terrain collapses into hidden instability. Vehicles lose balance, sliding sideways, wheels spinning uselessly against ice and snow. Panic erupts instantly. Soldiers jump out, trying to regain control, but the environment is working against them. The narrow passage becomes a trap, and in the chaos, Atami strikes again. He moves through the storm with perfect timing, appearing only when confusion is at its peak. There is no hesitation in his actions. He uses the environment as his ally, the collapsing terrain, the disoriented soldiers, the lack of visibility. Every action he takes is efficient, precise, and final. He does not waste movement or energy. He ends encounters quickly and disappears again into the storm before anyone can respond. The German soldiers attempt to regroup, but it is impossible. The passage has become a scene of total disorder. Some men are trapped between vehicles, others are lost in the snowstorm. Communication is gone. The convoy is no longer functional. It is fragmented into isolated pockets of survival. The commander, now fully aware that escape is slipping away, tries to rally his men for one final push. He shouts orders, but his voice is swallowed by the wind. His authority no longer matters. The men are too focused on immediate survival to follow long-term plans. Fear has replaced obedience. Atami observes this collapse from a distance. He does not rush in. He allows the situation to fully develop. He understands something simple but powerful. When people are afraid enough, they destroy themselves faster than any enemy could. The storm grows even stronger as night deepens. The wind howls through the frozen landscape like a living force. The convoy is now completely stuck, unable to move forward or retreat effectively. Exhaustion, cold, and fear combine into a slow breakdown of morale. Some soldiers begin abandoning equipment. Others simply sit in silence, waiting for whatever comes next. Atami finally moves in again, but this time there is no resistance that holds together. The remaining soldiers are too scattered, too weak, too mentally broken to coordinate properly. Each encounter becomes brief and disorganized. Panic spreads faster than commands. The idea of fighting back begins to disappear entirely. The commander realizes the truth at last. This is not a battle they can win, not because of numbers, not because of weapons, but because of something deeper. The man they are facing is not just surviving the environment, he belongs to it. Every advantage they have is meaningless here. As the convoy continues to collapse into chaos, Atami remains steady, calm, and unshaken. He does not celebrate, he does not speak. He simply continues forward, step by step, finishing what began the moment they decided to take his gold. And now, in the heart of the frozen wilderness, the difference between hunter and hunted has completely disappeared. There is only survival, and only one side still understands how to achieve it. The frozen chaos in Lapland has now reached its breaking point. What remains of the German unit is no longer an organized force. It is a collapsing structure of exhausted, terrified men scattered across an endless white wasteland. Their vehicles are damaged or abandoned. Their supplies are running low, and their morale has completely disintegrated. Every step they take now feels less like a military operation and more like a desperate attempt to survive a place that refuses to let them leave. The commander stands at what is left of their temporary position, staring into the storm with growing helplessness. His authority has faded completely. Orders are no longer obeyed with certainty. Even his closest officers avoid eye contact, as if acknowledging failure would make it permanent. He knows the truth now, even if he refuses to say it aloud. The mission is lost. The goal they came for is irrelevant. What matters now is simply getting out alive, if that is even possible. But Lapland does not offer easy exits. The storm grows heavier, swallowing the horizon entirely. The world becomes a blur of white and gray, where distance cannot be measured, and direction becomes meaningless. The cold cuts deeper than before, draining energy faster, slowing movement, numbing judgment. Every breath feels like a fight. Every step forward feels like walking deeper into a grave that stretches endlessly in all directions. Inside the scattered remains of the convoy, the soldiers are breaking down in different ways. Some sit in silence, staring blankly at the snow. Others check their weapons repeatedly, even though they no longer believe those weapons will save them. A few argue quietly about what went wrong, but no one listens. Fear has replaced discipline, and exhaustion has replaced logic. The unit exists physically, but mentally it is already gone. Atomy Corpu remains unseen yet constantly present in their minds. They no longer ask where he is, they ask when he will appear. That uncertainty is what destroys them the most. Atami moves through the storm with calm precision. He does not chase them in panic, he does not rush. He understands that time itself is his strongest weapon now. Every moment the enemy spends waiting, fearing, and doubting brings them closer to collapse. He observes their movements from a distance, studying how they react under pressure. He sees everything clearly: fear spreading through the group, trust breaking down, coordination disappearing. The German commander finally decides on a final attempt to escape. There is no longer any strategy beyond survival. He gathers the remaining men and orders them to abandon damaged equipment. The goal is simple now: reach extraction point at any cost. It is a desperate move, driven more by instinct than planning. The soldiers obey, not because they believe in success, but because standing still feels like certain death. The group begins moving again, slowly, painfully, into the storm. The wind howls around them like a living force pushing against their bodies, making every step harder. Visibility is almost zero. The world is reduced to sound, movement, and cold. They rely on instinct and memory, but both are failing them now. Atomy follows at a distance. He does not interfere immediately. He lets them move deeper into uncertainty. He understands that fear grows stronger when escape feels close but never arrives. He watches as they struggle through the terrain, making mistakes, losing coordination, drifting apart without realizing it. The environment itself becomes more dangerous. Hidden ice cracks beneath layers of snow. Uneven ground causes men to fall, injure themselves, or get separated from the group. Every misstep adds to the collapse. The storm hides everything: danger, direction, and even death. Then it happens again. Another section of the group triggers a hidden weakness in the terrain. The snow gives way suddenly, creating confusion and chaos. Men fall, shout, and scatter in different directions. The formation breaks completely. What was once a retreat becomes a survival scramble. And in that moment of chaos, Atami strikes once more. He moves through the confusion like a force that cannot be tracked. There is no pattern that the soldiers can understand. One moment there is silence, the next there is loss. He uses the storm as cover, the terrain as advantage, and their fear as weakness. Each encounter is short, brutal, and decisive. There is no unnecessary violence, only efficiency. The soldiers try to fight back, but coordination is impossible. They cannot see clearly. They cannot communicate effectively. Every attempt to regroup fails as panic spreads faster than leadership. Some fire blindly into the storm. Others retreat without orders. The unit is now completely fractured. The commander, watching everything collapse, realizes that control is gone forever. His voice no longer carries authority. His men no longer look to him for guidance. He is just another man trapped in the same nightmare. Still, he refuses to give up. He orders one final push toward extraction, hoping that sheer willpower might still be enough. But willpower means nothing in a place like this. Atami observes the broken convoy from a distance again. He sees exhaustion in their movements. He sees fear in their hesitation. He sees collapse already happening before he even acts. The storm in Lapland has reached its most merciless form yet. The wind no longer feels like weather. It feels like punishment. The remaining German soldiers are barely recognizable as a unit now. They are scattered across the frozen wasteland, separated by distance, fear, and exhaustion. Their convoy is gone, their formation is destroyed, even their sense of purpose has collapsed completely. What was once a military operation has now become a desperate struggle against nature itself, with survival as the only remaining objective. The commander moves through the snow with the last fragments of authority he has left, trying to gather whoever is still alive. But every attempt feels useless. Men are either missing, injured, or too mentally broken to respond. Some refuse to move. Others wander without direction, confused and disoriented by the storm. Radios are dead, communication is gone. The cold has stripped away not just their strength, but their ability to function as soldiers. The commander finally begins to understand that leadership means nothing when there is no longer anything to lead. Atami Korpi remains invisible yet fully present in their minds. His presence has become psychological rather than physical. The soldiers no longer speak of him as a man. They refer to him as something closer to a force, an unavoidable ending that follows them through the snow. Every silence feels like his arrival, every shadow feels like confirmation. The fear of not knowing where he is has become more powerful than any direct confrontation ever was. He does not need to attack constantly anymore. The belief that he could appear any moment is enough to keep them broken. Atami watches from the distance, calm and unshaken, as the enemy continues to destroy itself. The storm provides him complete cover. The land itself has become his ally. He does not rush into unnecessary fights. He studies instead. He waits. He understands that time is doing more damage to the remaining soldiers than any weapon could. Their exhaustion is deepening. Their discipline is gone. Their fear is now the strongest force in the battlefield. And fear, once fully rooted, does not need to be fought, it collapses on its own. The final attempt to escape begins when the commander gathers the last functioning group of men. There are no more vehicles worth using, no proper formations left to rely on. It is just a broken line of survivors moving through endless white emptiness. Their goal is simple: reach extraction or die trying. But even that goal feels distant and uncertain now. Every step forward is a struggle against sinking snow, freezing wind, and the crushing weight of psychological exhaustion. As they move deeper into the wilderness, the environment becomes even more unforgiving. The storm thickens, reducing visibility to almost nothing. The ground becomes unstable, hidden beneath layers of snow that shift without warning. The soldiers begin to lose each other again, not through combat, but through separation. One moment a man is there, the next he is gone into the white silence, swallowed by the terrain. Panic rises again, but this time there is no energy left to express it fully. Only quiet desperation remains. And then Atami moves, not loudly, not suddenly, but inevitably. He enters their broken formation like a shadow that was always there, simply becoming visible when the moment is right. The remaining soldiers try to respond, but there is no coordination left. Their reactions are slow, fragmented, and ineffective. Fear makes them hesitate. Exhaustion makes them slower. The environment blinds them. Atami uses all of it without hesitation. Every movement he makes is controlled, efficient, and final. There is no wasted effort, no emotional hesitation, only survival logic refined through years of war and suffering. The final confrontation begins to unfold not as a battle but as a collapse. The remaining soldiers are pushed further into chaos as the storm reaches its peak. Some try to fight back blindly, others attempt to run. A few simply freeze in place, unable to process what is happening anymore. The commander tries desperately to regroup them one last time, but his voice disappears into the wind. He is no longer a leader. He is just another man inside the storm, waiting for the same fate as everyone else. Atami moves through the chaos with a calm that feels almost unnatural. He does not chase victory. He does not seek revenge in the emotional sense. He is finishing a cycle that was forced upon him the moment greed entered his path. Every encounter is brief, every action precise. The wilderness around him feels like an extension of his will. Snow hiding movement, wind masking sound, darkness swallowing confusion. He is not just surviving the environment anymore. He is using it as a weapon. As the storm begins to reach its peak intensity, the battlefield becomes unrecognizable. There is no structure left, no clear enemy formation, no sense of direction, only fragments of movement in a white void. The soldiers are no longer functioning as a unit, and even individual survival is becoming uncertain. The extraction point feels like a myth now, something that exists in theory but not in reality. And still, Atami continues forward, because for him stopping is never an option. The frozen wasteland of Lapland does not end the fight with noise or glory. It ends it with silence, distance, and inevitability. And as the last remnants of the German unit struggle to survive the storm, one truth becomes unavoidable. They were never hunting Atami Korpi. They were trapped inside his world the moment they followed him into it. The storm over Lapland has now swallowed everything: land, direction, hope, and what little remains of the German unit. There is no longer any sense of formation, no coordinated retreat, and no clear chain of command. The soldiers who are still alive move like shadows through an endless white void, each one fighting a private battle against cold, exhaustion, and fear. The mission has fully collapsed into something much simpler now: survival until the next breath. The commander is no longer leading an army, he is simply moving with the remnants of it, trying to keep whatever is left from completely vanishing into the storm. His face is hardened, not with confidence, but with acceptance of failure. Every decision he once made with authority now feels meaningless. He can no longer tell who is following orders and who is just following instinct. The idea of victory is gone. Even escape feels uncertain. Only continuation remains. Around him, soldiers struggle through deep snow, some collapsing after only a few steps. Injuries are no longer treated, supplies are no longer counted. Even weapons feel heavier than they should, as if the cold itself is pulling them down. Every sound is swallowed by the wind. Every movement feels distant, as if reality itself is fading. The world has reduced them to something small and fragile inside a vast, uncaring emptiness. And yet, Atomic Corpi remains present in every thought. Not seen, not heard, but expected. The psychological weight of his presence has become heavier than his physical attacks. The soldiers no longer ask if he is near. They assume he always is. That assumption alone destroys whatever remaining courage they have. Fear no longer spikes, it sustains. It sits inside them constantly, draining energy, weakening judgment, and breaking whatever remains of discipline. Atami watches this collapse unfold from within the storm, perfectly still, as if the blizzard bends around him instead of against him. He does not chase aggressively, he does not reveal himself unnecessarily. He understands that the enemy is already collapsing on its own timeline. His role now is not to create destruction, but to guide its final shape. The remaining group attempts one last coordinated movement toward the extraction direction. It is no longer a military maneuver, it is a desperate drift through white emptiness. The commander signals forward movement, and whatever men are still able to walk begin to follow. The storm intensifies again, as if reacting to their attempt to escape. Visibility drops further. The terrain becomes more unstable. The sense of direction disappears completely. Then, without warning, another section of the group is broken apart by the land itself. Hidden terrain shifts beneath layers of snow, scattering the already fragile formation. Men fall, lose each other, or are forced to separate to avoid sinking deeper into the frozen ground. Panic flickers again, but even panic feels weak now, like a memory of something they used to have. And in that moment of fragmentation, Artemis strikes again. He does not appear with noise or warning. He appears like inevitability. One moment there is confusion, the next there is silence where a man once stood. The soldiers try to respond, but there is nothing solid to fight. The storm hides movement. The terrain disrupts coordination. Fear blocks decision making. Everything works against them at once. Atami does not need to overpower them, he only needs to exist within their collapse. The commander finally stops trying to control the situation. He realizes that command itself is meaningless now. There is no structure left to restore, no formation to rebuild, no morale to save. He is no longer fighting for victory or extraction. He is simply trying to understand how it ended so completely. But understanding does not come. Only silence does. The remaining soldiers continue to fade into the storm one by one. Some disappear through exhaustion, others through panic. Some simply stop moving, accepting the cold as final. There is no dramatic ending for most of them, only quiet removal from a world that no longer acknowledges their presence. Atami moves through this ending without emotion, not because he is cruel, but because he has already passed beyond the point where emotion changes outcome. He is not chasing revenge, he is completing consequence. Every action he takes is part of a chain that began the moment they chose greed over caution, violence over understanding. The storm begins to soften slightly, but the damage is already done. The German unit no longer exists as a functional force. What remains are scattered fragments of men trying to survive in a place that has already rejected them. And somewhere in that endless white silence, Atami Korpi continues walking forward, unchanged, unbroken, and still moving as if the world itself has not yet finished testing him. Because in Lapland, survival is not a moment, it is a judgment, and only one side has passed it. The storm in Lapland begins to settle slightly, but it does not bring peace. Instead, it reveals what remains after destruction. The once formidable German unit is now nothing more than scattered survivors across an endless white wilderness. There is no cohesion, no command structure, and no shared direction anymore. The battlefield has erased everything that once defined them as soldiers. The commander stands among the ruins of what used to be his mission. Around him, silence stretches in every direction. Men are missing. Equipment is abandoned. Footprints disappear almost immediately into the drifting snow. He tries to count how many are left, but the truth becomes obvious without numbers. There are too few to continue and too many to recover. The operation is no longer salvageable. It is only survivable, if even that. Atami Korpi remains unseen but never absent. His presence is no longer measured by sightings or attacks. It is measured by the effect he has left behind. Fear has reshaped the entire remaining group. Every sound in the distance is interpreted as his approach. Every shift in the wind feels intentional. Even when nothing happens, the soldiers remain on edge, unable to distinguish between reality and expectation. Atami has become less of an enemy and more of a certainty waiting to happen. The remaining soldiers attempt to regroup once more. forming a loose cluster in the snow. There is no real plan anymore, only instinctive movement toward what they believe might be the extraction route. But even that belief is weak. Some men argue quietly about direction, others refuse to move at all. Exhaustion has replaced urgency. The will to survive is still present, but it is no longer strong enough to guide them properly. The commander finally accepts what he has been avoiding since the beginning of the disaster. There will be no organized escape. There will be no reinforcement, no recovery, and no victory to salvage. The only outcome left is survival of individuals, not the unit. And even that feels uncertain. His role as a leader has completely dissolved. All he can do now is move forward like everyone else. As they push deeper into the storm, the terrain becomes even more deceptive. The snow hides unstable ground beneath it. The landscape offers no landmarks, no clarity, no reference points. Time itself feels distorted. Minutes feel like hours. Distance feels meaningless. The soldiers begin to lose their sense of progress, unsure whether they are moving forward or in circles. And then slowly the fear returns in a sharper form, because Atamikorpi has not finished. He never needed to chase them constantly. He only needed to let them break themselves, and now the final pieces are falling apart on their own. One by one, remaining soldiers begin to disappear into the storm, not always through direct confrontation, but through exhaustion, separation, and panic. The environment has become just as lethal as any weapon. The commander realizes that the group is shrinking too quickly. Every attempt to regroup results in further loss. The snowstorm itself feels coordinated, as if it is guiding them deeper into collapse. He begins to suspect that even escape is being controlled, not by strategy, but by inevitability. Then, in the distance, movement is felt again, not clearly seen, not confirmed, but felt. The remaining soldiers freeze. No one speaks. Weapons are raised instinctively, but there is nothing visible to aim at. The silence becomes heavier than the wind. The idea of Atami's presence is enough to stop movement completely. The psychological pressure reaches its peak, not through attack, but through anticipation. And in that moment, the final unraveling begins. Atami does not rush. He does not reveal himself fully. He allows the fear to complete its work. The soldiers begin reacting to nothing, shooting into empty snowfields, breaking formation further, and losing the last fragments of coordination they had left. Chaos replaces structure entirely. The unit no longer behaves as a group, it behaves as individuals reacting to invisible pressure. The commander tries one final time to restore order, but his voice is no longer effective. It is swallowed by the storm and ignored by the men. He understands now that leadership ended long ago. What remains is only motion. Atami moves closer, still partially hidden, still controlled. Every step he takes feels inevitable rather than aggressive. He is not forcing an outcome anymore. He is arriving at one. The battlefield has already decided what will happen. He is simply the one completing it. The last remaining soldiers begin to scatter in different directions, trying to escape something they cannot see. Some run blindly, some collapse, some simply stop, unable to continue. The unity is completely gone now. Even survival instincts are fragmenting. The commander stands alone for a moment, realizing that he is no longer part of anything. The mission, the unit, the pursuit, all of it has dissolved into the storm. He is just a man inside a frozen void, waiting for the final consequence of decisions made far before this moment. And somewhere in that white silence, Atami Korpi continues forward, not chasing, not fleeing, just finishing. Because in Lapland, nothing ends suddenly. The final stretch of Lapland is silent in a way that feels unnatural, like the world itself has emptied after witnessing too much violence. The storm has weakened, but what it reveals is far worse than what it hid. There is no longer a unit, no convoy, no structure of command. The German force has completely collapsed into scattered remnants, each man left alone in the frozen wilderness, struggling against cold, exhaustion, and the crushing weight of fear. The commander stands among what is left of his mission, and for the first time he does not try to give orders. There is no one left to obey them. The realization settles in slowly but completely. This is the end, not just of the operation, but of everything they came for. The gold, the pursuit, the pride, it all dissolved into this frozen silence. What remains is only consequence. Around him, the last survivors move weakly through the snow. Some are injured beyond help. Others are barely conscious, driven only by instinct. A few still carry weapons, but even those feel useless now. The cold has drained their strength, the terrain has erased their direction, and fear has already finished breaking what discipline remained. No one speaks anymore. Words feel unnecessary in a world that no longer responds. And Atomy Corpi is still here, not as a visible threat, not as a chasing enemy, but as an unavoidable truth. The soldiers no longer think about escaping him. They think about surviving until he appears. That difference has destroyed whatever hope remained. Atami has fully become part of their reality, something they cannot outrun because he is not bound by the same confusion they are. He moves with understanding while they move with panic. Atami watches the final collapse from a distance. He does not approach immediately. There is no urgency in him. The situation has already reached its conclusion. His presence now is only to confirm it. He understands that the battlefield has done most of the work. The storm, the fear, the isolation, all of it has already broken the enemy. He is simply the final step in a process that began the moment greed led them into this frozen land. The remaining soldiers attempt one last movement toward survival, but it is disorganized and weak. There is no formation left, only individuals drifting in different directions, hoping instinct will guide them where planning has failed. But the land offers no guidance. The snow erases paths instantly. The wind hides distance. The cold punishes hesitation. One by one, they begin to disappear into the white emptiness, not always through direct confrontation, but through exhaustion, collapse, and separation. The battlefield no longer needs to be violent, it only needs to continue existing. The commander finally stops. He no longer moves forward. He stands still in the snow, accepting what has already happened. There is no anger left in him, no denial, no resistance, only realization. The mission was never about gold anymore. It became about survival long ago, and even that slipped away without him noticing. Our Tommy finally steps closer, slowly, quietly, without spectacle. The last encounter is not a battle in the traditional sense. There is no coordinated resistance left, no structured defense, no strategic thinking. There is only exhaustion meeting inevitability. Our Tommy's presence alone is enough to end what remains. The commander does not fight back with belief anymore, only with the instinct of a man who has nothing left to lose. And then it is over, not in a loud explosion of victory, not in celebration, but in silence. The kind of silence that settles after everything unnecessary has been removed from a place. The battlefield of Lapland returns to what it always was before the war came through it, a frozen, empty wilderness where only the strongest will to survive can exist. The gold remains somewhere buried beneath the snow, forgotten now, meaningless compared to the cost it demanded. Tommy Corpy turns away. He does not look back. He does not reflect. He simply continues walking through the frozen land as if the world never interrupted his solitude at all. Because for him, survival was never the end of the story. It was the only thing that ever mattered.